When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Yes, that's right.
Hello and welcome back to the Master Keys podcast.
You know what, man? If everything really goes downhill, that song is going to be even more relevant.
Yeah.
You know, when you're broke, you got to have rich habits. When the market
Chandler's
is down, you got to have, wealth building mindset. I'm not saying that things are going to go downhill. It's just we put that clip up where we threw the word recession in there,
And we're fear mongering.
and I think we're at 200,000 views. So I guess people don't want
I think
our
that shows that
positivity.
everybody's thinking the same thing. But anyways, welcome back. Season 2, episode
something or other.
And today we're going to be doing a chat with our buddy Andrew Hines from Ontario.
Yeah, we're in the funny seats where we have to sit beside each other awkwardly.
We don't like doing that. Whoa.
It's because we got Andrew Hines on the show today.
Yeah, exactly. He's an investor and podcaster in Ontario, and he does some interesting stuff. He's now purchasing a campground, and he's kind of doing some alternative investments. So stay tuned. We go over it all. He kind of gets a breakdown on some of the financing things, how he expects to make money, and kind of what he's seeing coming in the future with interest rates and where he thinks the Ontario market's going to go.
Yeah, we've been hearing all your questions asking so what should we do now that things might be coming up on a slowdown, now that the interest rates are up? So we ask him that question as someone who's done a lot of stuff. His solution to it in part has been he's getting out of Dodge. He's investing down in Florida. That's something you've talked about a lot. This idea of investing in the U.S. Is really interesting. So I think there's a lot in this conversation people will like. I loved hearing about the campground thing. This is something when we had Sarah Larby on and she was talking about her resort project. He's doing this whole Airbnb model at a traditional campground.
You guys with your yurts?
Yeah, we talk. There's two types of people in the world, Neal.
Hard assets. They're going after canvas tents.
Hey, there's two types of people in the world, Neal. People who own yurts and people who don't own yurts. So
I guess I'm on one side.
Get on my yurt level. We're going to talk about this cool stuff he's doing, and follow along, listen, like, smash, subscribe. Please do that stuff. A lot of you are watching and you're not pressing the damn button. It takes 2 seconds. Press the button.
We beg of you.
Yes.
All right, check it out. Here it is. Thanks.
All right, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us here again. This is Andrew Hines. We're going to get right into things here. Are you good to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, so that's my name, Andrew Hines, and podcast host out of Southwestern Ontario, Burlington area, GTA. And I invest in Ontario, London, and I just bought a campground up in Tobermory area, which is a kind of a place that a lot of people like to go these days. And then also a Florida investor, Cape Coral, Florida. So I'm known for student rentals, new construction, and burring properties, all those types of things. Probably what you get a lot of on this show and hear a lot of on other real estate shows. So that's kind of the short version of it, and we can dive in wherever you guys like.
Yeah, maybe we'll bug you with a couple more detailed questions. But so I guess what is your where did you start with this? You mentioned a little bit earlier before we hopped on the mic that you have a construction company. What was kind of your progress? I know for me, it was I was flipping cars and then I wanted to flip homes. And I kind of worked my way into it. Where did you start? What kind of introduced you to it, and what brought you into the game?
So similar to what you told me earlier today when you were on my show, I started the company to facilitate my own burr projects and flips because having my own employees, with people who wouldn't leave the site, as most people know these days, it's hard to get people who just stay on your site. And how much faster could you be, especially burning private money? How important it is to be fast so you can get to that point of refinance. So I would be doing projects that, I'm building an addition and closing it in and having it ready for people to move in 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And people could not even fathom that with, today's standard of delivery. Standard of delivery for a project like that's 8 months. So if not 12. So it just depends. So that was the big reason for it. And it happened sort of by accident because the first project I did, it was, I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah. There. Congratulations, new dad.
He's teething. He's teething. Yeah. The first project I did, it was that problem. I couldn't get people. So eventually I found some people that I wanted to keep around, and they weren't the entrepreneurial type. They wanted to be, on payroll. And that was, the start of it. Didn't really want to have employees personally. So I started the company, And then before I knew it, I was getting asked to build other people's projects. So I started getting into sort of volume production building of townhouses and things of that nature, and doing some custom homes now, helping build out 126 houses the Sarnia area, Blue Point, like on the water of Lake Huron.
Yeah.
So, this is stuff like active business that, isn't necessarily the goal of a real estate investor, but it's a make sense kind of thing for me. It fits within my skill set, and I'm kind of growing an organization around that.
It's still crucial. You got to have a cash flow in the interim to make it so you can survive.
Right. Yeah. So you guys are realtors. I figured, and one of the things about that was by doing that, I didn't need to sell as many projects. So I was doing BRRRRs and doing, taking on clients, and by not needing to live off the income from flips, I could, basically just keep them and build my portfolio. And that was super helpful. And that was really why I started doing that.
How frustrating is it when you're doing a project and one tradesperson goes and you're expecting them to finish something, and then you call them and they're like, oh, well, there was a pipe in the way, so we left. We're not done. We just left. And you're like, okay, sick. Like, I can get that pipe fixed tonight, so you're going to come back tomorrow. And he's like, well, I can be back in about a week and a half. And you're like,
and now the next person's like, well, we can't start because those people didn't do the thing, so we're going to push you back a week. Well,
that was where I was at with the student rentals. It was like there was no room for error, because I would close on these properties in April sometimes, and students would be moving in September 1, right? So I got to close. We gotta gut what we need to gut. We got to start, pouring foundations or piers for additions, and get it all closed in and back put together so that it can be rented out for September 1. That's a 4-month time frame. It just didn't work with exactly what you're saying. We can't get back until next week. Sure, I can tolerate that when I'm doing production building of, a larger stuff, that there's just no way I'm going to have every employee on my payroll that's going to do all that work. But on the smaller stuff, it definitely helps to have those employees able to tackle it for you.
100%. So basically, did you get into student housing then pretty much immediately, or what was?
That was the start of it. Yeah. So a friend of mine was doing it. I was watching him. Like, I shouldn't say that was the first thing. Like, the first couple were just buy and hold single family homes back like 2011, start of the year. It was mid 2011 was my first, and then 2012 started the year. I went down into the States and started buying in Ohio in 2012. These are kind of outlining for you some of my failures. And then I ran out of money, so I tried to do a little partnership where I would tear down a house in London, Ontario, and build a duplex. Went through the site plan process, got the neighbors all upset. They called me a big bad Toronto developer, and axed my project. And I ended up having to hang on to that for like 5 years to get my investors' money back, and until the market came back to kind of get what we had sunken into it, because it was supposed to be like a teardown. And ended up, we already had the line snipped to tear it down.
It won't be needing this. I got to put all that back in.
And then had to actually call them and get them to hook it back up after that happened. Had the gas line cut, had to get the gas line drilled back in. So I had some bumps and scrapes early on. And that kind of got me out of the game. And then in 2015, I was kind of watching my friend, I was tail between the legs, totally, at a point where I'm like, all I've done is fail in real estate. Like, I'm not even doing this anymore. And then my friend just kept crushing these $100,000 flips. I'm like, I can't let him just do all this, and knowing that I can do it too, and jump back in. And I was he was a realtor, it still is. And he was giving me sort of the projects, his B projects. They weren't like A-level projects, but he'd give me the ones that were like, there's still meat on the bone, just not as much as the ones he would take. And that was why I had to build additions, because he would take the ones that didn't need additions. Anything that didn't need addition, he'd snap it up. But the ones that did need additions, he didn't want to do. And I'm like, okay, I guess I got to learn how to do additions, and had to hire the team. So and then I just ended up getting good at that. And that was kind of where, I specialized in it for a while.
Where'd the interest come from? Like, what made you think that you were going to do real estate? Because that's not, it's pretty ambitious to just say, I was going to do this.
Not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Well, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My parents, my mom was an entrepreneur. My dad was a school teacher, and my mom wasn't really like an active entrepreneur. She did it like sort of part-time while we were at home. She wanted to stay home with us, as we were growing up. So, things were tight growing up, and I heard my parents kind of argue about money, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to be more, more liquid, more successful, and find a way to do it better. So I thought going to business school, learning about being an entrepreneur, these things would all help. And ultimately what I realized is school doesn't teach you how to be an entrepreneur. Even if you go to business school and take entrepreneurship courses, the only thing that teaches you about being an entrepreneur is being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I saw people renting out student rentals. I saw students renting out and paying $500 a room times. There's these buildings right in front of Western University's front gates. There's 4 buildings, 4 levels, and they all had 5-bedroom apartments, and it was $500 a bedroom. And I'm like, oh my God, like my mind was just blown at that time, because this is back like 2006.
Yeah.
And, at that time,
like
that was huge cash flow.
Yeah.
Huge cash flow coming off these buildings. And I know that guy now that owns those buildings, but he really inspired me. And I'm like, I need to do this. Those buildings alone would have made more money than my parents, like way more. And I'm like, okay, so that's just what I need to do. I just need to own buildings like that. And I didn't figure that out for many years after, but I knew that I wanted to get into real estate. And it was just a long, bumpy road to figuring out what I didn't know, because obviously you try something and you don't have good advice, or you don't have people who have done it to copy. You make mistakes, and that's what I did.
It doesn't all click until you do it. The same thing, man. I messed up my first couple. Like you do it, and in your head it works one way, but you find out once you get into it that things either cost way more, or things are impossible. Like you said, like you got shut down for the duplex, whatever it is, and you will make some mistakes. Unfortunately, you need to be able to have the capital to get through those things, or the ability to like time that kind of saves your bacon. I think this market saved a lot of people from they made mistakes, but the market was growing so fast that they were able to get out of it.
There's going to be a lot of mistakes.
It saved everyone. Everyone looked like a genius, and myself included. Like I had projects that didn't go as well as I wanted. One project I did that if I had sold it when I was finished, I would have made like 20 grand. I'm like, there's no way I'm selling this for 20 grand. I'm just going to keep it.
Yeah.
You know what? But the market
look like a genius. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many people who practiced bad fundamentals in the last, 5 years were rewarded for it. Yeah. But I'm sure there's a quote about this: when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming without shorts on. And there will be that time where that happens, where the people who weren't investing with fundamentals will get hurt by it. And that's why I always talk about the fundamentals, cash flow, what keeps you in the game, buying for cash flow, even though you really win. And we talked about this earlier, you really win on appreciation and mortgage pay down. Those are the big ones that make it happen over time.
Yeah. But
full disclosure, I'm not wearing shorts right now. Let's talk about that, because the implication of what you're saying now, where we are right now, rates are up. We're not going to see the appreciation over the next 12 months that we've seen in the last 24, 30. What are you foreseeing right now? Like where are you seeing in your market? And how is this changing maybe what you're doing?
Well, I think all of Canada sees a lot of the same, right? We see that interest rates are being raised by the Bank of Canada, so naturally there's got to be give, right? So if cap rates were super low, now cap rates are going to have to come up a bit to offset the higher interest. So I see a rocky road. I know we dove into this topic a little bit when you guys were on my podcast earlier, and I really do think that we're going to see some crazy stuff in the next year or so, where people are going to be made to feel uncomfortable. I don't think that we can sustain, based on traditional economic theory, I don't think our government can sustain increasing these interest rates, because it's going to stifle our economy. It's going to cause negative economic growth, and it's still not going to stop the inflation problem. So where do we go with that? Like, I think eventually there's either going to be a conclusion that we either can't control this inflation, or we can't stop it. We'll just, learn to live with it, or we will see them do something like they did in the 1980s, which, I mean, the fallout from, getting interest rates into the teens would not be something most Canadians
do you think
would
there's
want to
an
see,
alternative
right?
solution to that, though, outside of just jacking interest rates? What's another option to kind of cooling the inflation that we're facing?
Well, I mean, obviously what you see them doing, like they can put a tax on foreign buyers. There are other things. Basically, taxes are the other way, because your typical economic levers are lowering interest rates. Well, that's the primary one, right? Lower interest rates, lower regulations. That's how you stimulate an economy. So the other side of that is they can just make it more cumbersome to buy, add more red tape. But that's obviously not going to be great. Yeah, the big benefit we could see would be, an increase in supply, because we both know, we all know that we have a supply challenge, very much so in Ontario, especially the area I'm in. Burlington, you'll see like an 800 square foot bungalow trade for $1.4 million, and it's just silly numbers.
That's it?
Yeah, really not nice stuff either, and like not a great neighborhood.
Say that again. That's a 1,000 square foot bungalow. How much?
800. Don't get carried away now.
Oh,
There was
sorry,
like, there was an
800.
800. No, this was in the peak. I saw. Yeah, it was
Yep.
like 1.4 million, and not in a great neighborhood
Was it
either.
nice?
No, not at all.
God,
like that
that's
needs
nice.
work.
So
That needs work.
I want to go back to your previous comment of like, because he asked, where do you think the market's going to go? And you're saying it's similar across Canada, and it is. But this is where like our big saving grace here in Nova Scotia is like, you can't rebuild that house, land or not, for the same
Yeah.
price that you paid. That 800 square foot bungalow, you could build that out of gold bricks, basically.
Yeah.
So you're dropping $1 million on that land, if not more.
Yeah.
Does that not lead to some concern?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna buy that kind of thing. I think that's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
terrible fundamental buy.
Yeah.
Especially because you don't really have the way to, unless you can develop that land and put a duplex,
there's a
triplex
play.
on it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, you're going to need a heck of a lot more than a duplex to make your money on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that those are wise buys. And I'm with you guys on that. I want to look for the areas that are sort of underpriced to begin with, knowing that water flows to the lowest point, and that people are going to be aware of this, right? Like if things all of a sudden get way too expensive in Ontario, people start thinking, well, maybe I should move to Alberta. One of my best friends moved out to Alberta. Maybe I should go out east. Maybe I can make my dollar stretch further if I look elsewhere in Canada, or if I look elsewhere in Ontario. And people have been doing this for a long time. And that's why you see these other smaller communities. They were a deal and they aren't anymore, because
Yeah.
people just said, well, you know what? I get to work from home. I don't need to be in the office every day. I can live 3 hours away from Toronto and just come in once a week.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes. So some people are doing that. People who are retiring, they're realizing, hey, if we sell our house here in Burlington, we can move up north, or we can move down to Windsor and live a lavish lifestyle with the money we keep in the transition, or we can just get so much more house to retire in if we want that, or whatever.
Yeah,
so
we've
that,
talked-
that kind of thing is going to keep happening.
Yeah, and we talk about this is that the area by area we're competing for people here domestically in Canada. We're competing for the young human capital that moves between provinces. And as Nova Scotia, we were losing those people for years and years to bigger markets. And now Halifax is having a lot of those people come back. And then we're also strongly encouraging net migration from outside of Canada. And that's going to buoy some of these prices up, which is why I think that we're not going to see the pullback that some people are expecting. Like, what do you think is, it's going to be area by area, but what do you think prices might do here in the next 6 months?
I mean, in 2017, we saw as much as a 25% correction in some markets in the GTA. That was in 2017. I mean, there's no reason
how
that
much,
we,
sorry?
we couldn't see more than that. 25%. Yeah. There's no reason that shouldn't happen again. I'm not saying that it will. Actually, I'll give you there are some reasons, some market factors. See here, the competing forces. Of course, we have this targeted 400,000 people to come into the country every year, and we can only create 200,000 new houses a year right now in Canada. That situation is not getting any better with the lethargic approval process pretty much across Ontario, and then of course other provinces have their own challenges.
And the supply
then
chain of materials and everything like that.
Supply
Price of
chain,
construction. Yeah.
hugely difficult to get people to show up to work for general labor jobs. White collar seems to be where people want to go. Trades, we have a little bit of a shortage. We need more people in the trades. So there's all these factors that make it really hard to rebuild these units. And we talked about cost of replacement. And I've always been big on buying things at under the cost of replacement, because people need a place to live no matter what. Economy's up, economy's down. People need a place to live. And if they can't rebuild that house, then how low can prices really go? They can drop down because of panic, but how can they stay down? If people continue to need a place to live.
It's also,
Go ahead, sorry.
I think we need to be very politically engaged in the sense that you need to monitor what your local governments are doing and how they're encouraging people to come to your area or not. Because, people are always going to need a place to live until they decide to leave your town, which is when you get a situation like Detroit.
Right.
I don't know have you been to Detroit?
I have. Yeah.
It's scary. Like it's terrible.
There definitely are some scary spots. Yeah.
Like, but I mean, just from it looks like a wasteland, because this is
streets
not
with no houses on
it's
them
not an
and-
exaggeration where it would go house, empty lot, boarded up house, house, empty lot, to the point that they were actually, as the city made a decision to tear down a number of houses because the empty abandoned homes were pulling down the value of
Yeah.
the still remaining occupied homes. So you couldn't sell your home for $40,000.
Yep.
These are real numbers because there was an empty house down the street that someone could buy at auction for $12,000. So in order
Yeah.
to help you sell your $40,000 house, they tore down the $12,000 home. This is a real thing that was going on in Detroit when you have a mass exodus of people. So
Yeah.
I think it behooves us as investors to also take
Yeah.
stock of what our governments are doing and monitor our
100%.
Do we have a government that is doing things to entice people to come to your area?
Bring people to come in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've experienced this firsthand because I invested in Youngstown, Ohio, which was a dying city for like 50 years. It was a bad decision.
How the hell did you end up down there?
Yeah, what drove you to that?
You glossed over that at the beginning. I'm like, did he say
Yeah.
Oshawa or Ohio?
Yeah, Ohio. I had a client that was investing there. He's like, you got to check this out. I'm buying houses, $10,000, renting them out. And not to say that you can't do well there, because you can. I'm not saying that you can't. But the way I did it didn't work well. I didn't really have the systems in place. But there's a place where, you're buying houses for these prices. If you need significant work to a house, like if there's like a water leak that causes damage, it's probably better investment decision to tear the house down than it is to try and fix it. You're in a market where
God, that's insane. I
cost
love
of replacement is still $300,000 for this duplex at the time that I had, and it was worth $15,000, but I would pay the closing costs, so I'd maybe get $10,000 out of it if it was fixed up. And yes, the cap rates down there, like 20%, whatever, but it's just
insane.
not wise.
Youngstown, Ohio.
So to
I
me,
got to Google that.
You see like a hurricane coming, you're like, oh God, it's gonna blow away my
Yeah.
entire portfolio.
I just made so many unwise decisions around that, and in theory it sounded great, and you know what, to a savvy, experienced investor that can set up the systems, I think it could be highly lucrative. It's just I wasn't that savvy investor at the time, and I always had, at the time, I figured, I'm going to be aggressive at this age. I'm gonna do things that maybe I'll make mistakes. I just didn't fully think through just how those mistakes would affect me, and cleaning up these messes, how that would suck to do. So I kind of use that as tuition though. Everything I learned there, I've applied into how I conduct my business now, and I don't make those mistakes anymore. And it's been very valuable learning. I'll say that at least.
I was gonna say that's a huge education thing. I'm not like trying to poke fun or anything like that. Because I've looked at the same. I'm sort of looking in the States in different places, and there's always, like you said, there's an opportunity that you might be able to capitalize on it. And I have seen in Detroit, there's a lot of like just families that will go to the auctions and buy a ton of houses, and they rent them out for low rents, but they're picking the houses up, like you're saying, for like 8, 10, 12, $14,000, and they're buying like 150 of them at a time. And I think by doing it at mass, they're able to.
Well, then you can control the market a little bit.
They have a bit of control over like a little bit of an area, and they're able to kind of like win on some. And even if you lose on 10% of them, like you're just prepared that 10% of them are going to be write-offs.
Yeah.
Then you know what I mean. But if you're
And that's
shooting
an
only for
active
a few-
business, right?
Yeah.
If you have local people who can help you, you believe in them, trust them, like, you build a team out around that. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. In my case, my property manager was broke unbeknownst to me and was taking my rents that he was collecting from my tenants and just using it for his own spending and not giving it to me. So, and one of those guys that, would make you feel bad as he screws you over and, like
Shout out
make
to
me feel like
Detroit.
I'm the bad guy. He let my house get destroyed. Like the tenant, they bypassed the water meter, I guess, and then the water got left on, flooded the whole house. Like the wooden fan blades were like sagging like that when when I found them, and I'm just like, oh man. So that was
Did you sell the house? What did you do with that?
I gave it to him. I
just
did
gave
a
it to
quick
him?
claim. I did a quick claim for the taxes owing. So he basically just took the tax burden on, and that was that. So that was my salvage on that one. Not at the end of the day, I'm grateful. It could have been much worse. It was, I think I was out like 30 grand after everything.
Not the worst thing in the world. A huge education, learning experience.
Could
for
have
you.
been worse.
Yeah.
Could have been worse. Yeah.
I've paid more and gotten less.
I was to say, yeah, at least you lost that 30 grand on a small place like that. It'd be worse if you got like heavily invested on a big project and got hosed.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of the outdated, dilapidated system that we have for permitting, and it seems like it's like this everywhere in Canada. do you guys ever think, I'm asking Chandler this too, like, do you guys ever think that there's actually some merit to it in the sense that if everything went through and then we built as much as everyone's fired up to do, we would be a lot more volatile market? And I say that because in the States, they run a much higher vacancy rate. Like they run like a 7% vacancy in a lot of places, 10% vacancy, even in the booming towns. And it means that when things slow down or turn around, they get hit hard.
Well, it depends what your objective is. Housing is also a lot cheaper in a lot of states. Like,
Sorry, as I'm saying, as an investor.
As an investor.
as a homeowner or somebody trying to rent, terrible.
As an investor, we want fewer properties.
Exactly. So I'm like, as an investor, there's almost a merit and a benefit to it. I would say as a homeowner or a renter, it's terrible. And really, it's funny because it's investors and developers that are the ones that are rallying for them to like approve stuff. And I feel like homeowners and renters are not. And they're the ones that are actually going to benefit from it.
Well, that's like when I was, getting ready to build this 60-unit project. I'm like, yeah, let's go, baby. And then I see like a bunch of like build, baby, build. And then I see other projects going up. I'm like, oh no, these are all competitors. Let's not build that quickly. Like, this is the fine line.
Yeah.
I don't know that red tape bureaucracy that slows down housing for years on end is
truly
ever
beneficial.
a good thing.
Yeah. No,
Well, I mean, we have that supply problem, right? So yes, I think that it could make it volatile, but I mean, you look at how propped up the market was by the way that demand just surpassed supply by so much. It was such a seller's market for so long. I mean, a balanced market, it'd be cool to see what the prices would be just in a balanced market. Like, are you guys even in a balanced market where you are right now?
No, not even close.
No, still a seller's market, just less.
Very
of a
much
seller's
so.
market
It's only
than
like
it was.
right now it's like maybe only 3 of 4 places sell in multiple offers instead of 4 of 4.
So how many days on market are you on right now? Like how many days on
Usually
average?
like sellers run a program whereby they hold offers for 5 or 6 days. So the days on market would be however long the seller waits to take an offer plus whatever. Like, so I say you're effectively 0 days on market. Like it's
your
one day.
average days on market according to your like system would be like 15 days or something.
It was so high, it's getting averaged
probably.
down. I think we're probably down to like
Also,
30
like
or 40.
the nuance of our data collection isn't awesome. So like there'd be a vacant lot in there that had sat for 300 days and it skews all the numbers, right? But
I'm trying to find the market data. We're still getting like on a weekly basis. It usually comes out at 80 to 85% of homes are still selling over list price.
yeah, something like that.
So it's still very much like you're saying a seller's market, but I think the garbage is not going as quickly or as high.
Right. Just
garbage,
if people have a little bit more options, right? Like, you know what I mean? When everybody feels like I got to get this or I'm not going to get anything, they lower their standards.
Man,
right?
it is
That's naturally
amazing the difference that even one other home in the neighborhood, like how that changes the dynamic. Like you put 3 homes that are all similar and give buyers options, and the steam that takes out of the bidding it's crazy. That's why the issue has always been supply.
Yeah,
Like,
and that issue is not going anywhere. It isn't, right? So we can still remain we can watch real estate prices come down and still remain in a seller's market the whole time. And I'm not saying that every city will experience it the same because I don't.
That's
think
an
so.
interesting point. Yeah. There's
We
this
certainly
idea-
could.
Yeah.
But I mean, to the point, I think that we could see a more volatile market if it was balanced, and maybe we will. But I don't think that that's happening here. That's more of a U.S. thing. Think about the U.S. There's just so many places you can go. Like you can just pick up and go to another major
And
city.
they do.
Like we only have
They
we
seem
only
to
have
do
so
it
many
more.
major cities here.
Like here in Canada, you're very much defined by your province. And I find people are really reluctant to move about. And we have like such little density compared to the States that, I don't know, people aren't as transient here, but it's nothing for people in the US, it seems, to just up and move states very quickly. And their political climate is so binary that every 4 years you might consider changing states, right? Like that's how volatile
I think where they're
it can
also
be
very
there.
patriotic about their political party that, like you're saying, like if a political party swaps, they're like, I'm leaving the state. And you're like
this
"What?"
place has gone to crap.
And they will literally leave. And then, but I think there's, like you're saying, there's also big cities everywhere. There's opportunities then in all those big cities. Like if you do something here, you might not be able to find a job in the next one in Canada versus there. Almost always can you find the next job. And then, like you're saying, I think inventory. I think you can go to any big city in the States and there will be a spec home available that you can buy and move into today.
Yeah. So what are you working on right
That
now?
is changing though.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'm just, sorry. I just kind of wanted to just switch gears here real quick. Like, what do you have on the go right now? Like,
so right now, I recently purchased a campground trailer park up in Tobermory area in Ontario, and that's we're launching, and it's long weekends are our launch, and so it's
May
been
long
intense.
weekend? Okay.
Yeah, May long weekend. So I mean, I don't know. We're going to learn just how many people really want to camp on that cold weekend. I mean, it could be warm, but it's always hit and miss. So it's a mix of what we're doing is maintaining the existing operations to a degree. We ended our seasonal program, so there were a number of seasonal trailer park renters that were just they rented a slip for a full season at a time. We kind of came in knowing that the price we paid for the park, that was never going to work. And we decided we're going to do a glamping model where we're actually staging tents and trailers, and we're going to be renting them out on Airbnb, and that's launching in June, that part of it. So
yeah, I saw that on your social media. I saw like a yurt sort of type thing, like which is like a fancy tent. I'm a yurt owner now.
Nicer looking tents. I don't know if I'd call it a yurt, but yeah,
yurt?
it's
yeah, I've got a yurt. You don't know about this, Bowie?
Sorry,
cool
go ahead, Andrew.
We'll have to talk about that yurt.
Yurt life, baby.
Yeah, kind of inspired from that theme, but you know, to be able to go camping and maybe you don't have to set up a tent, you don't have to sleep in a sleeping bag on an air mattress or worse. You know, you can have a queen bed, nice pillow, and still be with nature. And so you know, we did that, built them up off the ground with decks, and you know, they kind of get to do outdoors light and do camping light, and then of course with the trailers. We're going to be directly competing for kind of hotel stays. You know, people who would have stayed in a hotel, they can, you know, come be with wilderness, be right in the middle of, you know, we have obviously Tobermory and all you can do there, you know, go see Flower Pot Island and all that. Also Lion's Head, we're 15 minutes from that. We're 10 minutes from the Grotto, which are all the major tourist attractions. So we really love, you know, the location of this and the fact that it's kind of hard to get hotels up there in the summer, and everybody wants to be in Tobermory. So man, pretty excited about that. This
is something where I feel that isn't being done here when we talk about stuff that people, your market is 5 years ahead of us, right?
At least.
The fact that you're looking at doing something like this, and we had Sarah Larby on here, who I think you also know and have talked to, and she's doing something really interesting, sort of in a cottage resort type thing. And then there was that Netflix show where those women took an old like mid-century motel,
the old hotel,
and did it over.
That's not far from our campground. It's about 45 minutes.
It's got all these signs that says like rosé all day. And people just go there and take Instagram.
Sizable Beach area. The best thing they did was their branding and their social media. Like, I mean, I think
that's all.
Nothing wrong with the hotel, but it was really how they positioned it and pushed it out there. And then of course the Netflix show doesn't hurt. But yeah, it kind of caught on. You know, we looked at that and we're like, okay, we can take some of that inspiration. And I just saw like the appetite, especially during lockdowns, for hospitality stays and people crushing it in like cottage country for Airbnbs, doing $1,000-$1,200 a night on weekends up in Sizable Beach area for Airbnb houses. I really wanted to get into it, but we wanted something that would scale. So I'm like, well, what if we get a campground? We can do 20 of these, 30
and
of
also
these,
doing something unique, right? Like you're taking something like, all right, well, let's turn the dial just a tiny bit here and do something different.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, I like this. We're gonna stay on this topic for a bit. That's cool.
First, all of our shit just got thrown out. So, first question: why the hell do you have a yurt?
Okay, so I bought this property that is a triplex, and also has
one of the units is a yurt,
and then it has a yurt, and the people were running it as an Airbnb. Long term, my plan is to redevelop it into a series of townhouses. Yeah, this one, the So Shore.
Okay,
I thought about this. Like, we're gonna go down there and we're gonna do an episode with the yurt. Neal's gonna spend a night in the yurt.
Put that on Airbnb, man. People will like it.
The yurt makes more money than the units right next door that are inside, and then have running water. The yurt also does business all through the winter because people will still go in the winter and go to that yurt. And it's amazing, man. It's got a queen size bed, to your point. It has a fully finished floor. It has a propane stove. It has a wood stove as well. It's lovely.
You know, I gotta add to this. I just got back from BC and I rented a van. I rented a Westphalia. It's a 1984 Westphalia, and I paid
this faux hipster over here.
Yeah,
wants
I paid
a little nostalgia from before.
I paid $350 a night for a 1984 van that probably is worth about $20,000. So like $350 a night for weekdays in the spring when it's cold. Like, but anyways, I want to ask you, Andrew, what was financing like to buy that?
That's what I was
thing?
going to ask too.
How did you finance that?
We did it all private.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we're private funds, but I mean, what we paid for it, we got a valuation $1 million more than we paid for it right when we bought it. So we were able to get a little extra to cover what we wanted to put into it.
Yeah.
And this year's focus is really pushing the top line, showing that we can generate some serious gross profit. And then operational income, of course, and then go back and, try and upgrade our financing in tiers. So depending on how we perform this year, maybe we can get institutional next year. If not, we'll get an upgrade in our private financing with a slightly better rate, hopefully.
So you're prepared to carry it for 2
building.
years with the private money.
Whatever it is, it is. At the end of the day, if it has to be, it will. We know what our number is to break even, and if it ends up being that we won't have quite as much taking away as we would otherwise. That's okay. It's part of getting this stabilized and getting it to a point where we have our systems, we have our people, and now we can really scale this up. Because I also look at this and I know that every single year I can add income to this property. There's 90 acres. So and we have a river running down one side, and we're 5 minutes to the lake, Miller Lake. So we've just got so much potential on the property of what we can do. A little experiences.
No zoning restrictions. Once you're just kind of good to go, right?
No, there are zoning restrictions, so we can't operate year round right now, and I don't even think it's feasible for us to rezone it based on the fact that it's controlled. It's protected with Bruce Peninsula. So they have restrictions as to what you can do, what you can't do. But we are permitted to. It's weird. We can rent 7 months out of 10. Not 12, 7 months out of 10, which in my mind, that's 8.3 out of 12.
The old Aztec calendar.
So we're allowed to have trailers, anything mobile. So for the tents, of course, those can be moved, anything with wheels. So, if we can find some tiny homes with wheels, that's on the table. I'm going to see if there's creative ways we can throw in a tree house or, stuff like that. But then, of course, Airbnb experiences, it's commercial use. So, if we can sell experiences and, do different things on the land, then by all means, we're going to do that. 90 acres is a lot of space. So lots to explore and kind of lots to add to it.
So, yeah. So when you bought it, like in your head, the idea, like, was it, so you bought it basically it's like buying a business, right? So I'm assuming you basically bought the entire business and you bought it off the revenue that it's creating now, and there was a multiplier on that. Is that right? I mean,
we don't know if the owner had anything specific. Like when we looked at it, we just knew what, a single Airbnb cottage in Sizable, which is 45 minutes away, could do. And then we just looked at it and said, well, even if the existing operations only stay status quo, we know all we need to do is add X number of units that perform like, say one of my business partners, one of his units does, just add X number that perform like that, and we'll hit what we need to break even. And then everything after that is gravy. So that was sort of the thought going in, and it was a whole lot of faith in ourselves and what we could do. And then of course, the increased demand for people who want to tour Ontario.
Okay. So, and then this is a cash flow play then, really? Is that kind of the objective?
Yeah. I mean, a long-term wealth play was primarily the thought, and we know that anything we're going to make from it, we're probably just going to invest back into the business, unless we honestly can't figure out a way to use that money to make more money. So as long as we can find a way to put that money to work and make more money with it, we'll keep it in the business.
What's it called, and does it have like a social media presence now? Getting ready for the launch?
Yeah, we're just getting it all set up. So it's Maple Ridge Family Camp. That's the name that it had when we bought it, so we kept that. We've got our glamping brand, which is Grotto Getaway. And so I think it's the Grotto Getaway Glamp on Instagram. If you want to check it out, these are fresh pages, but we'd certainly appreciate the support. I don't know when this is going to air, but if people are in Ontario and they want to come check it out, I'd definitely be happy to have them.
Use our promo code at Master Keys.
Man, so
maybe we can get a promo code for this. Yeah, we'll do that. So Master Keys.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Master Keys, we'll do that, and just remind me of that after, and we'll get that set up so that they can get a discount.
Sweet. So I'm kind of I just want to backtrack. So it was a camping site in the sense that there was no permanent structures there at all, and people would just come and pitch their own tent. But there were also some people there with RVs, kind of deal.
Yeah, we had transient trailer sites. Yeah, so we had service trailer sites. So a good number of them, I think 14 of them had sewage connection as well. So I think we had 40 some odd and I don't even know the exact numbers. We have 40 some odd that have water and electric. And then out of those 40, we have 14 that have also sewage connection. So for those ones, we picked those sites specifically saying we want our own trailers on these sites staged in on Airbnb, because we don't have to move them to dump sewage. We can just leave them in place and don't ever have to move them. For the other sites, they don't work well for us to do that type of model. And of course, that would be a down the road thing anyway, but we might. We'd have to service them. Yeah. Well, they have utilities, but not sewage. They'd have to do the holding tank, which means they got to pull them out every few days and dump their sewage. I mean, some trailers can do it once a week. It depends if they're showering in them. So we just kind of split it up and said, okay, these sites are ideal for us doing that Airbnb strategy. The other ones, let's just let people keep booking. They can do their transient trailer nights. So people want to drag their trailer up to Tobermory and they can, go sightseeing in the day and stay on our campsite at night and what have you, stay a week. We just got away from the seasonal stays where, people would spend, $2,000 and stay for a whole season. That heavily model, I think, makes that's heavily discounted, and it doesn't make sense in today's,
that's like a lot of this stuff on PEI. The last place I went over there, they had some people who you could tell were going to be there for the weekend. You had other people that I think they parked their unit there sometime in the early 90s and have never left. And then you could see the resort reclaiming some of these sites and building, for all intents and purposes, permanent structures. And they had two models of them, and they were on piers. So in theory, you could throw them on a trailer and move them elsewhere, but they were little cabins. And I thought about it at the time, and I thought about it since here in Nova Scotia, of the flexibility of that model with the advent of Airbnb. And, they go through what now is a pretty traditional model, like, oh, yeah, you book it through them. And, they haven't embraced the Airbnb model, but there's something there, man. And I think it's interesting to see you in a market that's 5 years ahead looking at this. And we talked a bit on your podcast, and one of your recommendations was, as someone in a market that's gone through this before, take a long, hard look at some of these big rural acreages, because as the markets heat up and continue to go up in value, people start to look towards these remote locations.
Do you think it's
big spreads?
Do you think it's a market shift? This is getting a little bit. This is me going off the page a little bit here, Andrew. Do you think why is there such a growth in demand for the camping space? Because it's like, was it quiet there for a bit? Because I know, like, when I started whatever many years ago, and I went to my first few campsites, they were a little bit quiet. But I feel like over the last few years, they've been just picking up. Then COVID hit, and people couldn't do a lot of stuff outside. But camping remained, and it kind of pushed it in. But I'm like, is it also kind of like where the generations are now? Where, like, I think there was the baby boomers, and they had their kids, and that's when a lot of people went camping. And now it's like the next generation, people are having kids and are at that age now.
They have disposable income.
Yeah, they have disposable income, and it might be more fun to go camping than it would be to take your kids to downtown Montreal and stay at the W. Like, do you know what I mean? Do you think that's kind of what's driving the driving force now in the growth?
Honestly, like the Tobermory area specifically, people, it had been picking up a little steam. It got some mentions in Blog TO, and I don't know why the demographic seems to be going there. But Muskoka was always popular, right? I wouldn't say necessarily camping was popular, but cottaging always was. But I think what really happened is the lockdown and not being able to cross the border for non-essential travel caused people to look within Ontario for places to go. And then that didn't just go away, because once they realized, hey, this is pretty nice. And I'm a big believer that Ontario is actually quite beautiful. Like I'm no fan of Canada politically, but I love Ontario in the summer. I love wine region, Niagara on the Lake, Niagara Falls, Tobermory. I like all these different areas. I think they all have their own beauty. And I think as people who live here, we overlook it a lot. I mean, not to say that like you guys probably look at far more beautiful things because you have the ocean, but
it's nice here.
Like there's a lot of value in Ontario that people didn't necessarily get to see. And I think that's what's really made a change here. Is it now that they can travel again? Sure, that demand might go down a little bit, but people still know now, hey, the cat's out of the bag. There's a lot of really great places that we can go and visit. We've got the camping bug. Now we want to do that. I don't really particularly love camping, but I love Airbnb stays. I like vintage. I like cool stuff and cool stays, and I like that area.
Man.
So
it's
experiences,
stuff,
right? So we're going to throw some Airstreams. We got a couple of Airstream trailers that we're putting out there, vintage looking.
Westphalia
we got
for when Neal
trailers.
comes.
Yeah. So we're just going to kind of keep acquiring. So we have the two different brands, and basically anything under the Grotto Getaway will be like a really unique experience.
Get like an old school bus and convert it. You can do some cool stuff.
That would be sweet. I mean, we're dealing with manpower challenges, so it's like what we launched this year will include the tents and a handful of trailers, and then we'll continue to build that as we make money from what we're doing, and we can put that back into the business.
To Neal's question, I think it's a combination of things. We the nostalgic time that you're referencing, our population was probably set 25% less than it is now, right? So maybe some of this move of more people wanting to camp again is actually just that there's more people. Also, those people we do have are more condensed into the city. So there's that element of it. I think there's also been, I don't know, I just don't think, I think people now are looking for a different experience where they transition from, we know we don't want the rustic, like I don't own a tent, I live in a 500 square foot apartment, I can't keep tenting supplies and all my camping gear and all these things, my fishing rods in my apartment. But if you can offer me a turnkey experience that has some creature comforts that I'm used to, that I'll sign up for. 1 or 2 night getaway, not a 7-day excursion, that I have to really dive into. So I think it's a really, really cool marketplace to get into.
I think too, as like what we talked about in yours, is like with everything changing in the economy, with like consumer debt being where it is, and the average person I think is going to want to spend a little less. I think things like camping might make more sense, because going to another city and staying in a hotel and eating at fancy restaurants and all that is extremely expensive. And this might provide It might provide a more affordable option for people when it's like, okay, I can stay at a campsite, bring normal food, and like you said, if all the creature comforts are kind of already there, they just have to pull up with groceries. It can be kind of a fun thing, and I think it is different too. Yeah, it's a lot of fun in its own right.
Yeah,
and we look at that, like who are we competing with a campsite? You're competing with
the Sheraton,
motels, and whatever. But a lot of people just looking for a place to stay. Basic camping works great, right? Because that area can get really expensive. And then we've got our other demographic that we know they want to spend money for an experience, and we want to give them that experience. And it's a great win-win. So we're certainly excited about that. So, and that's just one of many things I have on my plate right now. But that, because we're right at launch, right here in May, it's been intense. Yeah. Before
we switch to your other projects, I want to ask. So this is an active business, really, and you're saying we. So do you have a partner? Is it?
I got a couple of business partners on this, guys, that my brother-in-law, a former business partner of mine, that we did a bunch of stuff together, and then someone that he works with. So we've actually got 4 of us involved in this project, and you know what? There's more than enough in just at a high level coordination to go around. We have full-time site managers on site. We have another full-time employee that we just brought on, and we're probably going to be hiring another couple. So, this is very much, yes, an active business, but our mission and mandate is delegate everything. Like we're not in this to run this. We're in this to build it and make it something that can operate without our intervention, and then do it again. Buy more of them. So we were already looking at new campgrounds to buy. We're like, well,
man, what? This gets me.
I know, I'm all fired up right now. I'm sitting here going, all right, I need to get off so I can go look at campgrounds. Last question for you on a refinance. What do you expect on like a LTV, like percentage wise?
Yeah, that's the trick. Yeah, I think we're going to be in the 55 to 65.
Yeah, I was going to say you're probably best case 65, 35. Yeah, well, short-term rentals, but also
land.
You could make an argument that it's just a straight commercial operation, right? It's not residential in any capacity.
No, it's not. I mean, it's all how they value it. I mean, there are physical buildings which can be secured, but then you've got trailers, which technically we'd either need to finance those separately because they're technically movable and they have VIN numbers. Or, can we find a lender that's going to, to finance those as part of the package? That's a little bit more of a unique approach. So it's for that reason that, I think that we're going to be facing a valuation more based on its land and income earning potential, not necessarily its current use. That being said, we've already had some pretty favorable appraisals on it. And, depending on what the market does, maybe things change a bit. But we're confident enough in the income we can earn that regardless of, what kind of financing we need to stick with, we can still make it work.
Interesting. No, that's super cool. Sorry, I know we dived really hard into that. What else you got on the plate?
The other big thing is Cape Coral, Florida, doing new construction. So I started last year, just picked up 5 lots, and then decided, okay, I'm going to aggressively pick up some more lots. This year, I've got a few building contracts underway right now, and I'm actually looking to scale that up to about 20 at a time, which isn't going to happen overnight. But the numbers made sense down there. I was able to, I was buying lots and starting at 23,000, bought a few at that price, and as high as about 45,000 for dry lots in Northwest Cape Coral, and basically building anywhere from 1,850 square feet with triple car garage, pool, outdoor kitchen to 2,150. And price wise for the building, I'm getting into being it all in with the lot for anywhere from 400 to 450 US.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, these numbers compared to Ontario, compared to Canada, compared to a lot of other markets in the US make a ton of sense. And Cape Coral is a very much a value area compared to the rest of Southwest Florida.
Are you selling them off, or you're keeping them?
So my current plan is sell one, keep one. I don't want to sell, but I'm actually working on getting my E2 investor visa so that I can potentially make Florida my tax home and not pay Canadian taxes. So in doing that, they want to see an income strategy that is enough to
warrant.
Basically, it's a viable. It's enough to warrant my running it, being there, and all that. So part of a bigger plan. But no matter what, I would have been selling some of them. It's just it's a great way to get liquid down there and do more and keep more.
What are you doing for financing? Is it an American bank that's?
I'm working on that. So far, all cash, which is painful.
Yeah.
But I'm working on loans right now. I'm in the middle of an application process. I've got a kind of a verbal approval, and so we'll be doing some private financing. It's not cheap, but basically draw loans that where I only pay interest on what I'm borrowing at the time. So
nice.
These are pretty quick projects, actually. Once we're shoveling the ground, we're like 6-7 months. So it's turning around quick. So there was a number of reasons I really liked it. And I basically agreed to partner with a guy that had been doing this for 10 years with this specific builder. And I partnered with him, agreed to finance the deal. And I just wanted to meet his builder. So I talked to him about it. I said, this is my plan. This is what I want to do. He was okay with it. And now I'm, building a relationship with that builder, working with her directly. And it's been going well. And, this is tough for me because I've been a real control freak, being my own general contractor and to be able to sign a contract and not have to make every, micromanaged decision throughout the process. It's pretty cool. So they actually have predetermined models that they build. They have like 6 or 7 different models they build, and you pick from one. So they're not going to just build you a custom home. You tell them which of their models, which they know every dollar and cent to the T on how to build it, and say go. And I know that kind of thing sort of exists here too, but down there you don't have the the big HST build at the end of the build. You don't have what we have here in Ontario called Tarion. Like, it's a warranty program. Not the same. Like general contractors, I think for a year they have to make sure that things are okay. But
we've got the
from my standpoint,
new home warranty out here.
Yeah. So and like no development charges to speak of, really. I think my impact and permitting costs are like $12,000 versus to build something in like Burlington, I think you're like 75. London's in the 40s for a single.
And they wonder
home,
why we have like an issue with housing.
Why every house costs $700,000 to build? Yeah.
And this is why why would people maybe want to move to Florida?
Right. In the immigration to Florida, like just like Southwest Florida, the area, like as of last year, they were saying it's like 2,000 people a day. Like it was something ridiculous. So, and you know what? That can't go on forever.
No,
and it's politically volatile too, because Florida is a bit of a swing state, although it's becoming a little bit more red. It's tough. It's tough to know exactly how that goes. But again, I still look at it relative price point. Where can you get so much property for that price? 80-foot lots, 80 by 120. You're not far from the ocean all around, and 750 square feet in your garage alone. I mean, these are big properties with pools.
Yeah.
Like, it's, to me, like, we live in a pretty small house right now. We're about to move, but it's just like, wow, I could really see myself in there.
Yeah. What's one of those houses retailing for? Have you sold any or?
No, we're holding off. Could sell them based on the market. There's like average 6 or 7 days on market right now. Very much a seller's market there. Anywhere from, so I'm seeing like the smaller model that I mentioned with a pool going for like 575 right now.
Wow.
And the bigger one, I actually don't have a comp for that because I haven't seen that model sold on a dry lot. They're usually on water, and they're going for 800,000 plus. So
Nice.
Mine being a dry lot, it's if the other one's worth 575, this one should be worth mid to low
650 range. Yeah.
625, 650.
Gotcha. No, that's a pretty good return then for sure if you can get through them once you get some financing in place.
The built-in equity, right? It's all setting up the systems, right? So I figured, why not scale it, right? If the system works, scale it. And, because sometimes these opportunities are a flash in the pan, right? Like sometimes they don't last. So when you see something that works, for me, I want to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak.
This sounds to me like you're not sitting on the sidelines while there's some maybe pessimism out there in the market.
Well, again, it's very much relative price point. I do believe that people look at communities where the prices made more sense or make more sense, and those communities where the prices make more sense aren't as affected negatively when there's a downturn. It's the cities like Toronto and Vancouver that are the most likely to correct because their values were the most inflated. So I look at this and I see it as a nice hedge over what I'm doing in Ontario. And no, I'm not sitting on the sidelines, because how much sitting on the sidelines can you really do? We can't sit around forever. I've watched over the last 2 years where I sort of, I took my foot off the gas with the lockdowns because I saw this situation brewing, exactly what we're seeing right now. I knew that we were going to face an inflation crisis from the first lockdown, because you can't shut down people's businesses and start printing money and not expect that to happen. Why that surprised anybody? Like,
well, what's funny? Who was I saying this to the other day? I'm like, yeah, man, for 2 years, me and Neal have been like, oh my God, these rates are going to rise, man. There's going to be so much inflation. These rates are going to have to come up.
Yeah.
And then
it just took longer than I thought.
Like I said the same thing. If this was any other scenario, these rates already would have been risen. And then I'm still pissed and somewhat surprised when the rates are risen. I'm like, yeah, I mean, exactly what we said was going to happen happened. The thing that frustrated me and frustrated a lot of investors is they said in 2020 we can expect these rates to be low until the end of 2023, and a simple Google search on that promise, like they said these will remain low until the end of 2023. And if you look at what people were even doing 6-7 months ago, or 12 months ago, you had no reason not to take them at their word on that and lock in a variable product. And so people are going to be maybe a little harder up than they're hoping to be as a result. It's frustrating, but
that's why I learned never to take the government at their word.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just, I think the trust thing
especially
is
the
something
Bank
to
of
learn.
Canada. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, the next thing I was going to ask you about is, do you have any multi-unit projects going on in Ontario?
No, not like I have no more active projects outside of that, like that campground, and just what I'm currently holding. And then, everything active is now south of the border and the campground. So I kind of just decided, I want to get some investments over into the States as a
100%
call it a
agreed.
political hedge and a hedge among, a few other things. It'd be great to have that visa and be able to transition there.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. That's what I'm trying to get that started right now to make the move. I'm shopping in North Carolina. So
North Carolina is beautiful.
Yeah.
We spent some time there, North Raleigh. Really nice area. There's just so many great spots in the States. I mean, of course, there's not nice spots too.
Yes.
But there's you've got a buffet of options down there.
Exactly. What I'm just gonna ask you. So you're in Hamilton,
Burlington.
Burlington. Sorry.
Right next door.
What is the multi-unit trade for there? Like just like a normal mid-level, nothing like not brand new product, not
6-unit
dilapidated.
mid-century.
Yeah.
Like we're like everything's north of $300,000 a door. Like
$300,000 a door. And what kind of rents would you get out of a 2-bedroom in those buildings?
Well, okay, so just thinking, and I'm not like the expert on Hamilton, but I mean Burlington's a little bit different. rent wise, like I know the duplexes are doing like 2,500 on the upper, basement can get 2,000. So if you're looking at apartments like that, maybe a little bit of an adjustment downward because they're obviously not quite as nice as the duplex units.
Yeah.
But the rents have been getting pushed up, but they're not that much higher than the rents you guys told me you're getting out there earlier.
Yeah, based on relative to purchase price, relative to household income, relative to GDP, our rents are actually pretty high here in Nova Scotia.
Right. Yeah. And you'll see markets like that, right? Like there are markets like that and they don't make a ton of sense. And you'll see people are not like enthusiastic about it. And I'm like, man, those rents are amazing. Like you could so easily replace your income with those cash flows. And then you look at markets like I've been dabbling in, like wondering why I didn't make transitions to higher cash flow markets earlier.
Yeah.
It's hard to see sometimes because usually, like you said, a higher cash flow market is not as exciting in the time, and that's a reason it is a higher cash flow market. And so you're kind of buying in advance. Once it gets going, then you're like, oh, like we talked about homogeneous, but like it's going there at the first point that it doesn't feel super exciting. The values aren't necessarily cranking up. You weren't able to crank your rents up, and you might not get the best quality tenant to get started. But I'm with you. The water always flows down, so it's better to go downstream and kind of catch that versus trying to jump into the pool up at the top and hope it goes well.
Yeah, that's what I would change. Giving it over again, like being a control freak never really served me. I needed to find ways to delegate to new GCs and not just try and, I would only stick in markets I felt like my team could work on when what I really should have been doing is going to, places like Chatham, Windsor,
going to good
going
markets
out
and
east,
building a team.
Yeah, like high cash flow markets and just go spend time there. Go to their real estate meetups and find general contractors that frequent them. My biggest takeaway from my experiences in the States is basically look for people who have a reputation and have something to lose if they don't deal well with you. If they do things that are that are unethical, then word gets out and they have something to lose. So I'm a big fan in the States. You can look up RIAs, Real Estate Investment Associations, and you can just go to a local meetup and anyone there, like a lot of them have been there for 10, 15 years. Like they know each other. Right. And that's big, right? If you can start, knowing them by name and they know you by name, that changes the whole game. And then then you can delegate better. Because these people have a vested interest in doing good business.
Let's talk about real estate community. Obviously, you've worked to build an online presence at the same time as you've been doing all these other things. How did that come about? What was the motivation? How's that going? And what does that actually look like from a day-to-day operational, community?
Yeah. Okay, so it started where I wanted to put out a whole bunch of value and didn't know exactly how it would work out, but I wanted to build a name in real estate and be known for that. And then, maybe people would pay me to speak one day, or maybe I would monetize that. I didn't know how I would monetize it, but I knew there would be ways. The other thing was I wanted the community. I wanted to be able to connect with people locally because I didn't really know anybody in real estate investing up this way. I had my London contacts, but I didn't really have anybody up here. So starting the podcast, I started the meetup. I used to do a meetup probably about 3 months in. First one we had like 25 people out. We got it up to 100 people coming out to these meetups. Nice. Real estate investors getting together, sharing stories, and I know a lot of very successful real estate investors that have come to those meetups, and many of them didn't start becoming successful until after coming to them. So I've seen an incredible amount of people follow on the podcast, learn a whole bunch, and then go out and absolutely crush it. And that's a pretty rewarding feeling. But you know what? It's kind of like Kevin O'Leary says, why be on TV? Well, because pretty much no matter who he calls, they'll take his call. I think that's certainly been a benefit. The meetings I can get into, the people I have the privilege of being able to talk to and bounce ideas off of has been really helpful to me. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that, and I want to keep pushing that forward. And then of course there's going to be that monetization strategy eventually. I am looking at the opportunity to start a real estate fund, and in which case, I've got a base to launch an exempt market product too. So you never know, right? I haven't really directly monetized the podcast. I never really wanted to load it with commercials. To this day, I've never run a paid commercial after 3.5 almost years. And not to say that I won't, nothing wrong with that, but it had to be worthwhile. And to me, just making, a couple $100 for a commercial never really felt like a good reason.
Yeah.
Yet. But that being said, I have, now I have like a full-time video editor, and it's like, well, I'd like to at least cover his salary.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But so maybe making some changes, but it's been going well. It's one of those things that once I started, I couldn't stop. Once I got to the point that it's at, I couldn't stop doing it. And I do greatly enjoy connecting with people such as yourselves. And, I'd much rather do it face to face. That's what I really enjoy getting, doing the in-studio sessions, and then, we can chat for like an hour afterwards. And that's a great way of doing it. But yeah, the community has by far been the best thing to come of it.
That's awesome, man. We've kind of, that's very similar to our motivation here. So we can relate to that. Where can people find you? So
on Instagram, at the Andrew Hines, and then on any of the podcast platforms, if you just search Andrew Hines, you might want to throw in real estate there. You'll find me wherever you listen to or watch your podcast.
Awesome. Any last kind of parting thoughts? We usually ask people what success means to them. I'm sure that's something you've given some thought to. What would you have to say to people what success means to you?
Yeah, that's a good one. Ultimately, I think success is being able to live life on your terms every single day. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have one thing that you want to do. Like people always, talk about your why. And I think a why is important, but a why isn't necessarily, one thing that you want to do, or, if I could only just buy that second home or quit my job. I think it's being able to kind of choose each day and say, what do I want to do today? And what's going to bring me the most enjoyment and fulfillment in my life today? And now that I have a son, that's, that has a whole extra layer.
It's a motivator, man.
Yeah, that's huge motivator. Biggest motivator I've ever had, because, success is the only possible outcome. Like I won't allow it to be anything else. And that's for him, because I want to be able to be there for him. And that means no matter what happens in any of my ventures, I'll make it work. Doesn't matter if they don't go great. So that was a big reason to not sit on the sidelines. Whatever happens, I can deal with it. I kind
of feel the same way, man. Like it's going to be a different market, maybe for the next 12 months, maybe for the next 2 years. But I don't know. Yeah. We figured it out this far. So
yeah, you figured it out this far. People are still going to need a place to live. They're still going to need a place to live.
Yeah, and there'll be opportunities, man. Like there's that terrible expression, like the best time to invest is when there's blood in the streets, right? Like,
right. And I look at that like, so if that does happen, let's cost average our way out of it. Let's go buy some cheap real estate. Let's not cry over spilled milk. Let's go buy some cheap real estate. Yeah. And
I love
bring
it, man.
some investors together.
It's
not the crash that's going to kill you. It's how you're going to handle it.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, Andrew, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast. Encourage everyone to check out Andrew's podcast as well. Happy to, connect again in a few months and maybe see how that project is going. Everyone can find that online too. And if you're up in Ontario and looking for a great place to stay.
Yeah. If you guys are ever out this way and you want to get around a golfing or something, just let me know.
Will do.
Absolutely.
Thanks
man.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.